Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shreya Thakur. Welcome to CRIMETAK English. Today we are back with another episode of horrifying deadly serial killer. Have you ever thought that a woman who is considered as a life giver, who is believed to be tender and disseminate love all over, can actually dip her hands in pool of blood? Stay calm, viewers, because this story can shudder you from inside. This is a story of a woman who got a sexual thrill out of climbing into the patient's bed while they were dying. Enthralling, isn't it? We are talking about the infamous American serial killer, Jane Toppan. Jane Toppan was born to the name Nora Kelly. Her mother died of tuberculosis when she was very young. The bereavement of wife's death, along with the discrimination they faced being Irish immigrants, propelled her father, Peter Kelly, into alcoholism and extreme poverty. Later, Kelly abandoned Nora, her sister Delia, and Nellie. They all grew up in an orphanage called the Boston Female Asylum. After a few days, it is said that her father, who was a tailor by profession, sewed his own eyelids closed. This is obvious that it was a rumor. How could anyone sew their eyelids shut? But this story distressed Nora Kelly throughout her life. Later, Delia was sent to the streets for prostitution, and another sister, Nellie, ended up in an insane asylum. Viewers, you have no idea to what extent a rugged childhood and disturbing stories about her father could affect a girl child. In 1862, Nora was placed as indentured servant to widow Aunt Toppan, or auntie, who changed Nora's name to Jane Toppan, which sounded less Irish. Nora was harshly treated in Toppan's family. Auntie Toppan directed Nora to hate herself. She was trained to be more English. She was punished for telling stories. Aunt Toppan's daughter Elizabeth and Jane came close and thought of themselves as sisters. But this was unbearable for Auntie Toppan, so she severely punished Jane for imbibing herself into the family. When Aunt Toppan died, Elizabeth took over the house and continued to treat Jane as servant, though with more kindness than her mother. Elizabeth married to church deacon who moved into the Toppans' house, but some strain or dispute caused Jane to move out of the house she had lived in for 20 years. In 1885, at the age of 33, Toppan started working as a trainee nurse at Cambridge Hospital. She was nicknamed Jolly Jane for her bright, caring, extra sweet demeanor. She was hired out by wealthy clients as a private nurse. But her fellow nurses started hating her, taunting her about her father's rumor. Some of them even tried to get her fired by gossiping that she had spent her small wages on beer or missed required curfews. She twisted these accusations into slanderous gossip that resulted in the expulsion of 2 innocent nurses. Toppan glee at her closest friend's dismissal. Some of her patients conveyed to the doctor that they had overheard her saying that there was no need of keeping the elderly alive. But the doctors were convinced that she is a good nurse and dismissed their concerns. That was the era of sepsis and other common infections, so if Toppan's patients were dying, nobody pondered about it. But in reality, Jane was killing them too. According to the Toppans' only surviving victims, Amelia Finney, who had a uterine ulcer burned off with silver nitrate, Toppan fed her a glass full of atropine and belladonna-derived medicine that, combined with the waning effects of an earlier morphine administration, accelerated the effects of both. After that, Finney's vision faded. Her breathing grew slow and labored, and she assumed that she was hallucinating. Then Toppan balled Finney's hair in her fist, pinned her gently to the pillow. She sank her teeth into Finney's neck, holding the jawline, watching her throat gasp for air. This gave Toppan a kick and goosebumps beneath the ribs of her corset in her hips. With her free hand, she turned Finney on her back and peeled open her eyelids to see how dilated her pupils were. Suddenly, another nurse came down the hall, and just in time, and Toppan moved away from Finney. Later in the morning, out of shame, Finney attributed the scene to a fever dream and told no one. Toppan later admitted that her ambition was to have killed more people, helpless people. Now the doctors could no longer ignore the complaints against Toppan, no matter how convinced they were of their falsity. She was dismissed from Cambridge Hospital without a nursing certificate. Toppan served in many homes as a full-time direct care nurse, and when she tired of caring her fuzzy elderly patients, she overdosed them, first on morphine and then atropine drugs. She revealed in her confession that she did not do this quickly. She used to bring the victims near to death and then bring them back to life just to observe the effects. She didn't stop there. She murdered her foster sister Elizabeth with a dose of strychnine in 1899. Toppan later said about her foster sister's death, "I held her in my arms and watched with delight as she gasped her life out." Jane confessed to her lawyer that she had killed more than 31 people. On June 23, 1902, the Barnstable County Courthouse found Jane not guilty by reason of insanity. She was admitted for life in the Taunton Insane Asylum, where she eventually suffered from dementia. Toward the end, Jane would say to other nurses, smiling, "Get some morphine, dear. We'll go out in the ward. You and I will have a lot of fun seeing them die."